This is Talk is Sheep, a podcast by the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Come along as we take conversations that matter to you into the high alpine.
Mr. Hamilton.
I've heard of that guy once or twice.
Yeah. So we sit down with Trev. This is a bit of episode 33 went sideways audio wise. This has been step 3 of 3 trying to get a taxidermy one through. It sounds like the audio was pretty good on this one. So we're going to put this back in place of 33, which didn't come out so nice audio wise. And then we're using this as episode 47 as well. So Trevor Carruthers, Rackmaster Taxidermy. Yeah, it's good. But some of you may have heard this already in 33, but we got the better audio quality on this one. So we've redone it. Hopefully you can get a little bit more out of it than that first one that we did. So.
Oh, I did a quick check already, and the audio seems much, much better on the recording side. So yeah, and again, every time we chat, I always learn something. And as we discuss, I even took a 710 mil bottle of salt into the mountains this year and got that satisfaction of pouring it out. But yeah, he gets into that and why it's important to bring so much salt and how to work with the salt. And yeah, it was pretty cool listening to how he gets in there and how he starts the initial cuts on the face is something I've never seen done. It's always you start at the back and you flip over and then you peel from the inside. But yeah, he approaches it completely different, and that's an exciting part of this cast, I think.
So with you went in, you did a fly-in, and you had a sheep tag, you had a boo tag, you had a moose tag, and you guys were successful on moose. Were there any thoughts about possibly doing, were you guys going to mount the moose, or did Greg consider that? Or
no, it wasn't a consideration at that point. It was, it quickly turned into a meat hunt, and all of us have moose mounts and taken moose before. So yeah, we just we took the antlers out and the incisor tooth to be legal. And yeah, there was no consideration on my end or the other guy's end for taking a cape out of a moose. However, we did bring in preparation. We had like 5-10 pounds of salt at the lake as well to hopefully get a sheep or a goat or a boo down. So, but yeah, next time.
Cool. So you guys had considered maybe a caribou. You may have, that may have been something you mounted if you'd shot a big bull or something like that.
Oh, absolutely. I was 100% gonna get a mount done of any caribou that I'd taken.
Yeah, I did mine. I was in the same area as you back in 15, and I just that's one of my prettiest mounts. Like the sheep are special, obviously, because they're sheep, but yeah, just that caribou is stunning. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's a nice bull, but yeah, I'm so glad that I got it mounted. So.
Oh, totally. It's when I first started hunting, the 1 and 2 animal that I wanted for bucket list was caribou and mountain goat, and I've now had a chance to hunt both. Not successful, but we booked for 2023 yesterday, so we know that there's both in this area as well. So I'll start counting the salt right now.
Yeah. Cool. So this is episode 47. Just a bit of a plug here on Trevor. He's been a big part of the society. He's done it. He donates a ton of stuff every year. Everyone that comes to him that's not a Wild Sheep member, he buys them a membership as a customer, donates every year to the society. He won the President's Award in 2020. Was the recipient of that, and just does a ton of work.
Somebody else won it with him, though, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Wild Sheep Foundation was there.
Yeah. Um, he also is an organizer of the Jurassic Classic. He's the lead on that for the Wild Sheep Society of BC. So does a ton of work, heavy lifting in the conservation community. But above and beyond that, also just the ton of work he does in donations and that sort of stuff. So just a great guy, and then very knowledgeable when it comes to the taxidermy side of things as well. I've seen his work. I actually haven't had the pleasure of killing anything recently, so haven't sent anything over to him work-wise, but Trev does a fantastic job on the taxidermy end of things, and obviously a really interesting listen today about the work that he does and how for you to prepare for your hunt, what you need to bring, how to, once you got an animal down, how to deal with it, and all the nuts and bolts around that. So.
Totally. Like I said, always learn something chatting with him.
If you looked up the words conservation superhero in the dictionary, you would see a picture of our friend Omer from Precision Optics. A tireless donor and supporter of all things wild sheep, Precision Optics, located in Quesnel, British Columbia, truly stands alone in the high alpine. From optics to rifles to outdoor gear and a knowledge that cannot be surpassed, toss in that killer smile and you have a total conservation package. Precision Optics, we are truly thankful for the support you show us every step of the way. Find them online at precisionoptics.net or in Aroma Foods, located just off Highway 97 in Quesnel, BC.
Mr. Carruthers, Rackmaster, how's it going, man?
Great, man. Great to be here.
So you two are just off the mountains, fresh out of BC. I've been home now for 6 weeks, and you guys are just out of the bush. So both you guys had a great hunt. Steve got a couple of moose on the ground. Trev, tell us what happened for you on your stone sheep hunt in northern BC.
Yeah, we went to Plan C, I think it was, by the time we got around to it. Ended up hiking in. We'd been planning on flying and ended up hiking in, and positive, flexible attitude is something I've always heard on any hunt plan. So just stayed positive, figured we'd go explore some country that we didn't really know much about, and had my buddy Darren there from Alberta. He had a goat tag in the same area, and so we hiked in September 13th, and managed to get lucky on day 5. Killed a nice 9-year-old ram up in the Skeena region in Region 6 of Northwest BC. It was pretty amazing. Far exceeded my expectations of what was probably going to happen on a Plan C hunt. But it was great. Really, really good hunt. Sharing it with a good buddy, and we had some highs and some lows, like any sheep hunt, and it just worked out really good.
That's awesome, man. So this is your second stone sheep, and what was the hunt like? Do you see was there much pressure? Was there many guys back there? You see a lot of rams? What was it like?
No, didn't see a single person, which is nice, going, that second week of September. We followed some horse prints in from the outfitter, and followed some footprints in that were walking out, so we could tell that there was at least somebody that had been in there on foot backpacking within the last probably week or 10 days. We hiked probably 15, 18 kilometers in over a stretch of 2 days. We got to one spot. It was a low-hanging valley, and then pushed the final bit into some aldery stuff on day 3. But didn't see any other people. Didn't see a lot of critters, which was actually a little surprising. The valley we were in was a real big valley. Looked like it should hold a lot of goats and sheep in some of the spots. And I think total we saw 6 rams and 5 ewes and lambs. A couple, a nanny and a kid just above camp, and a wolverine and a wolf. And that was all the critters we saw. I guess we saw a couple goats on the hike in long ways away, and some down by the highway and whatnot. But that was all we saw for critters in a total of 7 days, when you consider hiking days and whatnot. But nice not seeing a single person back there as well, and just kind of having the area to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, that's just, and that goes to show you get off the opener, there's a lot more opportunity, and The Rams are a little more skittish, I think. Mind you, August 1st, they're pretty skittish, I guess. But, I've always had much more success on those early hunts, but I love hearing these stories, these late season hunts. So now, your Rams 6 weeks has 6 weeks to thicken the hide up and stuff. What was the hair like? Was he pretty thick or was he still pretty thin? What was his hide like?
No, he's amazing. Really nice long hair. Really dark cape. Darren on the walk-in said, like, what kind of stone do you, or it was a walk or the drive, he said, what kind of stone sheep do you really like? And I never really thought of it. I can't say if I like dark sheep or light sheep or mixed sheep or anything. This ram is really close colorations to my first ram. Side by side, they're actually really similar. I think every stone sheep looks pretty stinking cool, and so this one has a real cool mix of real dark shoulders. Really cool contrasting lines on his legs, the white and the black, and then a nice gray space with a bit of a line across it. They just all look so cool, but you look at the differences between a September 17th cape and an August 1st cape, and a guy like me, I love that more than anything else. Is just how much longer that hair is. They just look amazing. I've never hunted the opener in BC yet. All the stone sheep hunts I've done have all been in September. I guess I killed my first ram August 21st. So that was the first time, or that was the earliest I've been. But other than that, I've hunted September and October for stones in BC, mainly just due to work schedule and getting away and mixing family vacation and whatnot in. And short of some snowstorms and whatnot, I love getting away that time of year where you don't have the crowds and some of the pressures of opening day and whatnot, and the sheep are just really beautiful that time of year.
Yeah, right on, man. That's fantastic. So now I've seen pictures of your ram, beautiful mature ram, but looking at them, and this is topical this time of year or this year with all these immature rams that have been shot underage or not full curl.
Yeah.
So looking at your ram, I think it wasn't full curl, but certainly a mature old ram. Do you want to talk about that experience for you and shooting a ram on age, and especially you and I have talked about this a lot, about all this issue in BC with these these young rams that are being shot and these issues. What was going through your head when you pulled the trigger, and tell me about the experience. You just said something before we got online here about aging them for 6 hours or whatever that number was. Just showed the level of dedication there. So
yeah, I think we probably watched them for a total of 5.5 hours, maybe. And that whole time wasn't spent actually aging. When we first spotted them, Darren spotted them from camp in a spot that we'd walked by the day before. And I said, man, that spot holds sheep. It just has tracks all over it, minerals, and it just seemed like a spot that they'd show up. I actually made a comment earlier in the morning that we'd probably see sheep within 300 yards of where we walked yesterday and the day before. And so Darren spotted them right where we thought they'd be, and had no inclination that they were there. And the wind was horrible. It was blowing right to them from camp. And took kind of a slow approach and just said, well, let's see if we can get a little bit better angle without screwing them up with the wind. And got to a spot we were probably 750 or 800 yards away, and I put the scope on him. And I remember in the first couple minutes, I said, he looks like he's got quite a few annuli up top, but at 700, 800 yards, it becomes a game of just kind of watching him as many times as possible. Could tell he wasn't full curl from that distance, that he was probably shy of it by a bit. And we I had the idea at that point that I knew the wind was really bad, and if we had to sit there all day and come back the next day, we would have. So we probably sat there for 4 hours, 3.5 up on a little ridge, and took some video, took some pictures. I started forming the idea that ram was probably 8. I know that area, and that's probably important to touch on, knowing the genetics of the area or the type of rams that it can produce. I know it produces a ram that usually isn't as big as maybe some of the Region 7 rams, and is fast growing. And that's evident when you look at the difference between my first ram, which I shot on the 7 side. But they dipped into a little bit of a valley, and I thought, boy, we might get a chance here to get closer and look at them without screwing this wind up. So we snuck up this little drainage, and it actually worked out almost too perfect. I didn't think it was going to work out as well as it did when we first started, but we ended up 275 yards away from them. Put the scope on him at 275 yards, and we had him and another ram, and that's when, that last probably hour and a bit is when I spent really putting age to him. He was with a ram next to him that was 6 years old. We looked at both of them. I took a lot of pictures. I have a Times Up adapter for my Olympus camera, so I took a lot of pictures and video. He kept turning away from me, and it was a bit of a snowstorm for a while, so that probably added a little bit to him. And Darren and I would sit there, and I would go through my pictures and tell him what I had him at. And I had him at 9, 8, probably 9 for the longest time. I couldn't really tell whether he had that 9th annuli. You could see he had lamb tip, which is something that a lot of guys either miss or have broomed, which can cause some issues and whatnot. But I was confident he was 8, didn't want to shoot him based on being 8. At one point, it looked like they were going to go, and the one younger ram got up and looked a little skittish. I knew he's looking right towards us, and started walking. I think Darren said something like, "They're gonna bust here in a minute," and just no real need to get on the gun. I said, "Well, if it happens, it happens." And finally, he actually turned around, bedded, facing towards us. That's when I got a real good look at the front of his horns. And at that point, I was confident he was 9. He had a real good ridge in the front, and I had a solid 8 after conferring with Darren back and forth. And I remember actually chuckling about it, saying like, boy, this is an interesting feeling this year with all the media attention and social media attention and podcasts about aging rams and whatnot. And but I was extremely confident at one point, and just looked towards Darren and said, I'm going to shoot this ram. And I kind of made the decision at the point that I was 100% confident. And he was exactly what I thought he was. Talk about that long hair. I mean, some of that long hair was very close to that last annuli, which made that tough. I don't know what he has for distance between the base and that first ring. But not a ton, so it made it difficult until he turned towards me. So just a lot of different angles, conversation with the buddy, pictures, knowing horn segments, and seeing what I knew were 8 solid lines. He had a couple false lines to sort out, and seeing them from both sides made a big difference. But yeah, it's a process, no doubt, and it's a game of less than inches. It's a game of just being real sure before you pull the trigger. It was an interesting feeling this year with all the conversation that's going on right now in the sheep hunting community in BC.
And I've been there before too, and it's a long walk, that 175-yard walk or whatever it was to go and look at your ram until you get your hands on them, and you count them about 7 times. You go, and then you start to de-escalate, and sort of you can actually enjoy it, right? So
and this one was very rewarding because I walked up, I counted him once, and it was a very solid. Like, I turned to Darren and was like, he's exactly what I thought he was. He's 9 years old, and not a hesitation about it. And CI went great, and no hesitation there. He's a very obvious 9-year-old, which obviously makes it a little easier. Very good rings. We had the right weather for it, other than a bit of snow that kept us, from having a solid idea. But once it cleared a bit, it was confidence. It still feels weird walking up to a ram to verify, but I was very confident what he was.
Yeah, awesome, man. And that just goes to show you, you're an experienced guy. You've been hunting sheep for a long time now. And it was a pretty obvious 9, like you said. and still the time and effort you put into them just goes to show you can't take anything for granted, and you put your effort in and you were rewarded for it. So hats off to you, man. And what just a stunning ram. I just love the look of it, and really, really pumped for you, buddy. You deserve it.
Thanks. Yeah, it was pretty awesome experience.
Very cool. Okay, cool. So, hey, I guess let's segue now and talk about some taxidermy. We've done this. Steve and I have done it 3 times now. You've done it twice. So we did a podcast with Craig Stoley. Didn't work out because of our end, a tech issue, and then we did it on yours. Did one with you on, and that one was suboptimal, the quality of the product, but we pushed it out there. Regrettably, I guess, a little bit. Having said that, I know there's been a number of people that have got some really good information off that podcast, and I know they've reached out to you. And was it Mike in Chilliwack that we were talking to? He definitely got some really good information off that podcast, but audio quality was poor. So here we are. We're going to round 3. I think we sound good. Hoping that this will be a better podcast for our listeners. So we're going to hit the taxidermy angle, talk lots about your work as with the Rackmaster Taxidermy Studios. Talk about just planning for your hunt, the hunt itself. Basically, it's going to be the same style of podcast we did earlier. Well, actually, what we'll do is we'll replace that podcast that we did. I think it was 32 or something. You said, Steve, somewhere in there. 33. So we're just going to dub this one in place of it, but also have it as a new podcast. Obviously, there's new content here, and some of the stuff we'll have covered before. If anyone that listened to the poor quality and got through it, hats off to you. But anyway, we appreciate you taking the time again here, Trev. So let's kind of go through the basics and go back to the planning stages. So you're planning let's use this because we're sheep hunters. Well, let's use sheep hunting as an example. Maybe you even want to use your hunt as an example of the process you go through. So let's go back to planning your hunt and what that looks like from a taxidermy perspective.
Yeah, you bet. I think what I highlighted last time too is it's really important to plan for success and be prepared for success. Doesn't happen all the time, but the more you plan for success, the more you're ready to deal with it when it comes. And it sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, but you want to be sure that you can handle everything after the kill. So no different than handling meat and having game bags and a system to get the meat out and packing and time with weather, etc. It's planning for success with taxidermy as well, and obviously more important for some people than others. But especially for me and my business, I try to promote, being prepared and knowing exactly what it takes to be successful or to help take care of everything when you're successful. So yeah, for us, ours was a pretty standard type of hunt. 2 guys backpacking in, not really much different if we would have got dropped off on a lake somewhere. We hiked probably the same distance that some people would hike on a float plane type hunt anyways. We started by having a plan back at the truck. And so that's having enough salt to deal with things when you get back. And then also having enough salt per person to deal with, 1 or 2 animals when we're hunting. And the system that I use works pretty well for 1 or 2 animals. If you're by yourself or if you're with more guys, it works well. What I do is I reference a 710 milliliter bottle. Last time, bringing 710 milliliters of salt in your pack. That's about the minimum that a guy can get away with. If you want to properly spread it out and have a cape that's long enough to have some options like pedestal mounts or wall pedestals and whatnot. And I'm going to stress that 710 milliliters does not go a long ways if you don't do a very good job in your prep work, like your fleshing and whatnot. So that's essentially what we did was we brought in the 2 710 milliliter bottles each of salt, and had a 5-gallon pail or whatever it was, a small Home Depot pail of salt back at the truck, and that's essentially how we prepared going in. Also having a game bag for a cape, and no different than having game bags for meat. We had a separate bag that I knew was my cape bag as well.
Right on. So you guys did go in with the intent that, we might be packing 2 animals back to the truck. So I think you said 18K hike in or something. That's a pretty daunting task carrying, I guess, your 2 trips really. Like you're probably not going to carry everything out in one with 2 animals.
Yeah, we went in with the idea that maybe we have success early, and we would leave camp there and hike out with 1 critter back to the truck, and then hike back in kind of empty. Of course, when you kill on day 5, that turns into day 7 by the time you hike out and whatnot, and very quickly could chew up 9 or 10 days on a plan. But still had the idea that maybe we get lucky on day 1 or day 2 with either a goat or a sheep, and could turn around and do both. It would have been a momentous task, but nice to be flexible anyways and give yourself the option versus painting yourself into a corner.
Yeah, and like you said, plan for success, right? Plan for two animals down, and cool. Yeah. So somebody planning a trip that, we talk about the salt. What are you running for? What are you running for a cape? What are you going to put that in? And then in terms of what you're bringing with you, and also caping tools. So what do you got? You got what kind of knives? What sort of thing are you bringing along for that?
So this year I carried just a Benchmade folder bug out as my main camp knife, main knife that I use for everything. Also used it for breaking the entire animal down, and then I had a Havalon with me. A lot of times I won't bring a Havalon. I have a small caping knife that I kind of prefer for that I can sharpen as well, but the weight savings just wasn't there, so I brought my Havalon and a number of blades, so Havalon I used the next day with a bunch of 22 blades, which is my preference for work, for some of the small caping work. But up on the mountain that day, all I used was the Benchmade bug out, and that's all I ran for knives through the hunt, is just the combination, the one knife that can handle kind of everything around camp and on an animal, and then a Havalon for caping or fleshing and whatnot.
And you use the Havalon to flesh, then you don't use your camp knife.
I used the Havalon for a face area, and then I used the Benchmade for a lot of the rest of the cape for bigger fleshing. And it's just a feel thing. I like a bit of a longer blade for some of that meat and fat and whatnot around the brisket and up in the high shoulders and whatnot. So a combination of the two. Some of that fine work, like I said, I really prefer. I have a little bighorn handled caping knife with just a little blade on it. But by the time I added up the weight of that and the sharpening system and whatnot, it just I left it back in the truck and didn't end up using it this trip. So I used a Havalon with probably 5 or 6 blades, maybe, which I sharpen as well as I go.
Okay, cool. So using your trip as an example, you kill this ram. I'm guessing it's later in the day. You watch the ram for 4 or 5 hours, whatever the case may be there. So you knock them down late at night. What time do you get back to camp? And then how do you manage the head? Obviously, the head's still on, the hide's still on the head and that sort of stuff, getting back to camp. But did you get them off right away? Did you wait till the next day? What did that look like for you, Trev?
I waited till the next day. Usually I'd be the guy who'd do it that night. A lot of times in camp, I'm the guy who stays up and says, let's get it off because it's going to give me a better product. Earlier season, I would have caped him that night, but we got back to camp at about 11 or 11:30, crammed some food in us, and it was a very cold night. It had snowed that morning, and so I laid the cape out while we were breaking down meat. I was confident that the entire body was cold and the face hadn't been rolled up or anything like that, so I left it just underneath the game bag right beside the tent, and it was cold in the morning. It was actually really nice and cold in the morning, and that's really what it comes down to. You have to consider, when I talk about treating or thinking about things in the same way as meat, is it comes down to warmth and moisture and bacteria growth, and that's really what the entire process is aiming to clean up. Is protecting against warmth, so not letting any warmth stay in the hide, and moisture is what promotes bacteria, and that's what salt is used for, is getting all of that moisture out so that way bacteria can't grow. No different than if you you break down a critter and it's a hot day and you put all that game meat in a garbage bag and keep it all bundled up, and you don't let it air out and cool down, that meat will start turning. It's the same bacteria. So you're just treating that cape the same way. I was confident that the quarters were really good. We put them down by the creek where there's really good cold air. I think it frosted that night. And just as confident with that face in that condition. Again, I didn't roll it up or I made sure I let that air get to it and really cool it off overnight. Usually I'd stay overnight or stay up and just do it, because it probably takes, half hour, 45 minutes to get it off the face. But I was confident leaving it. So yeah, got in, ate some supper, and then yes, the next day, day 6 was our meat processing, caping, fleshing day, and getting everything ready to hike out the following day.
Cool. So you're back at camp now. You've got the animal there. I guess let's actually, before we get there, let's talk about you walk up to your animal, you're going to do your field photos, that sort of stuff. How are you approaching now, and how are you getting that cape off? So maybe talk about somebody that's going to do a shoulder mount, and then maybe even somebody that wants to do a full body mount.
Yeah, that's where it all starts, is obviously getting lots of pictures, taking that time, and then realizing that you have to break that animal down. Caping takes some time, as well as debone or quartering and whatnot. My basics for anything is starting between the horns, right behind the horns, and running a straight line right down the back all the way to the tail. One way or the other, whether you're doing a shoulder mount or a full body, doesn't really make a difference. Run that line straight down the middle while you have an animal sitting there kind of squared away, and you can, stone sheep are really cool because they have pretty easily identifiable marks usually on their between their shoulder blades and along their spine and whatnot. So running that down and opening them up a bit, that's going to start getting some heat out, and it's going to help you with your deboning process anyways, doing the gutless method, pulling back straps and whatnot and going from there. So I always tell people run down with the hair. So rather than running up, a lot of guys will start in the shoulder blades and work their way up. You can cut a lot of hairs, especially on an earlier season cape, it'll show. So start at the top and work your way down and run that knife with the hairline, and you'll usually cut a few less hairs. Big elk or something like that, or big moose, doesn't make much of a difference, but anything with smaller, easily identifiable cuts, you can start seeing that in the stitch line at the end, and it's just nice to have none of those cut hairs. Also easier to work on the meat. For a shoulder mount, I tell people just go to the midway of the body. Always take a little bit more, whatever you think your taxidermist needs, take it, and he can always cut it off. It's not going to save you. It's going to save you ounces if you take less, but those ounces can't be put back when the taxidermist needs them. So I tell people mid-body. When I say mid-body, I'm talking like in between the front leg and the back leg. Find the line about midway in there and start cutting down on both sides around to the belly. And when I say belly, you should be getting into, very, very far down where a diaphragm would be. So that way you're not up in the underneath the armpits or in the brisket area. So don't be afraid of cutting down around that belly area. Tell people that for shoulder mount, just to ring around the kneecap and tube the knees out. Obviously, life size, you're going to need to make some relief cuts behind the back of the leg, so you can make relief cuts to make sure that you can get that hoof separated from the lower ankle. Relief cuts on the back legs as well. But shoulder mount, ring around them, break the knuckle off if you want. You're not going to end up taking that back for meat anyways. And then you can pull that down into tubes around those legs. If you make those cuts, you'll have lots for any type of shoulder pedestal or wall pedestal mount that you want. Watching blood management is important when you start dealing with meat and caping at the same time. So you can't be rolling an animal all over the place while those cuts are made, or you're going to get backstraps dirty. So I start by backstrapping or taking the backstraps out before I start moving an animal side to side, working on each shoulder. And I'm quartering while I'm caping, if that makes sense. I'm pulling a front quarter off and caping down, and then managing the meat at the same time as I'm managing that cape. But just watching which way the blood rolls, even turning that animal around and letting it leak away from the hide and not letting blood pool up in the hide is another one. Blood is worse than water, obviously, for bacteria growth, and warm blood sitting there can really promote bacteria growth in the hide.
So you get the cape off and you found you made a mistake and there's blood everywhere.
Yeah.
Maybe you get back to camp, or maybe you put it in your pack and there's a bunch of blood on it. Just throw it in the creek, or how do you take care of it? You just get a dry cloth to wipe it off. What do you use?
Yeah, it can. Some of it can be situationally dependent. I'm a fan of throwing it in a wet creek, a cold creek, and letting it flush out quick. The one thing you have to remember is that you're introducing a lot of moisture in there, and you're going to have to deal with that as well. So making sure that you're going to realize that water, you want it to drip off as soon as possible, and then that salt is not going to go as far because you're going to be dealing with that water that you had. But if you have a mess of blood, I find it more important to get that blood out by quickly washing it in a cold creek, and then just realizing that that's something that you're introducing and then going to have to deal with. If it's just a bit of blood, not as big of a deal, but it's definitely a good idea. Early season too, if you're dealing with warm temps, 30 above and whatnot, depending when you kill that ram, it's not a horrible idea either to slosh it around in there quick, let it cool off. Just again, knowing that you're going to have to deal with that moisture and let it dry off as well before you leave it.
And this seems like common sense. Is it correct to say that if you got a white animal, you got a Dall sheep or a goat, you're more concerned about blood than obviously a dark stone or maybe a dark bighorn?
Yeah, for sure. And goats hold blood, like crazy. Just especially later season goats, they hold a lot of blood. Different types of animals hold blood differently. Bears don't hold it nearly as well as hollow-haired animals and whatnot. But yeah, whiter animal, and even those light stone sheep and whatnot, it can be a lot of work for a tannery getting that blood out of there.
Okay, cool. So you're back at camp. You've got your animal off, and maybe same sort of scenario. You wake up in the morning and you need to get this thing. Get its face off and get it fleshed. What process is involved there?
Yeah, so it's funny. Darren and I had an interesting conversation at like 11:30 or midnight whenever we're eating there. It's like you get into as soon as you shoot a ram or you have success on a trip, you get that like get home-itis, right? Where I can't remember what Mike called it on the other podcast there, but like you just, the second that you have success, you see the truck almost and go like, man, that's the goal. I could get out of here. If we started hiking right now, we can get out of here. And you have to resist that a little bit and say like, okay, well, first off, we can reduce our weight by doing things properly. Second off, there's some steps that we have to take regardless. We can get back to the truck, but I still have a sheep cape to flesh and put some salt on. I can't roll it up and let it sit in a bag for 20 hours of driving home. And so you have to really, again, that's part of planning, is saying like, okay, that next day is not going to be get the heck out of here. It's going to be working on stuff. So we had that conversation. It's like, you know what, we're hiking out the following day. That's the way it's happening. It's going to take us a lot of time to hike out. And so let's give ourselves a good day. And in the end, I mean, it kind of sucked. We had a really, really nice day working in camp that day. And the next day it poured rain all night long, and we hiked out in the pouring rain. But again, we'd had to deal with it anyways back at the truck, and how easy things were to deal with back at the truck and back home was well worth that extra day. So we woke up that next morning and I had breakfast and I started working on my cape, and Darren started working on deboning meat, and it was just turned into a kind of half-day process. That's where I'll walk through some of the steps of taking the cape off the face. What I like to do is start by looking at a ram straight in the face, so turning its nose towards me and pulling its lips up and down towards me, so that way I can see the gum line right along the teeth. So what I do is I pull that bottom lip down and I run a blade as close to the teeth line or gum line as I can to take as much of that lip skin as possible around the bottom jaw, and I follow that line around the bottom jaw, and then do the exact same with the top. I come right in tight to the gums and take as much flesh as possible on the cape doing that. I always tell people, as soon as I'm looking at that ram straight in the face, I remember that I have to take an incisor tooth. So it's just, I don't know why, but it just reminds me when I'm looking at that ram like that, that I have to take a tooth for CI. In the last couple of years, obviously that's a change. But it makes it a lot easier when you're caping the other way to have those cuts pre-started by doing it that way. And I took a few pictures actually this year, and we'll chat about putting them somewhere, just some cape prep stuff of where I made my cuts and how things look when you do start cutting. Essentially, taking more than less is important. But that's where I start by caping. I then flip it around, and you'll have the hide close to the horns somewhere where you've made that cut. You can make a Y incision, which is Ying to each horn from there. You can make a T incision, which is straight up, and then a straight T to each one of the horns. As long as you make a clean cut, it's not a huge deal with a sheep on which way you make those cuts. It's very easy to stitch that T or that Y up, but you want to go right to the base of the horn at the back quarter of the horn there. I start working around the horn, and I took a couple pictures again of this, but pulling down that hair, all the hair, and then you'll find the spot on a sheep horn. Goat horns are very similar, where you can cut along the bottom where it's soft, and it's right where soft meets hard of the horn, and so you're going to cut around the outside of that cut, making sure that you keep pulling the hair down before you go any further. So it's a little bit of a tedious process, pulling hair down, making sure that you cut a little bit, pull some more hair down. Don't just wring it and cut off a bunch of hair, because that stuff can make or break what things look like when your taxidermist is putting it all together. Deer is obviously a little different. Deer, elk, moose, you're coming from underneath to the burr. But with sheep, you want to make that outside cut first, the whole way around that sheep. And from there, you can start peeling back that hide. So pulling back between the horns, being really careful. Some of those sheep don't have a lot of gap in between the horns, so being careful with that flap in between. And then coming down behind the skull to where the ear butts are. You want to take as much ear canal as possible. So I tell people, you want to get the smallest of that ear canal. Should be smaller than your pinky or the size of your pinky. If you start cutting into an ear and it's, the size of your thumb or bigger, you can cut closer to the skull to make sure that you take more of that ear canal. So you want to just see a little tiny ear canal where you cut. And essentially with caping off the face, if you're taking more than less, you'll always be in good shape. So take more along the bone. That's where you really are going to dull a knife out or a Havilon blade, is because you're constantly running along bone, really getting as much as possible. You're not trying to, it's not the same as when you're taking it off the animal or you're trying to leave as much meat on the quarters. You're trying to take as much off that skull as possible, and then you won't make any bad cuts. From there, you get down to the eyes, the back of the eye socket, and again, it's running the knife right along that eye and pulling that hide out, and almost running the knife right along the eye, making sure you take as much eyelid as possible. And what you'll see is that eyelid sticks to the eye, and as you pull it out, you can cut that eyelid away from the eyeball. Again, just one of those spots that people don't take enough and don't run that knife right along the eye as much. Sheep have a pretty identifiable preorbital gland, just like deer. And once you get past that eye, if you don't dig that knife straight down and straight towards the skull, you're going to miss it, and you're going to cut a big circle right where your preorbital gland is. No different than deer and elk and whatnot. So you want to, as soon as you get to the corner of that eye socket, you want to turn that knife straight towards that sheep's skull and start cutting straight in and down, and you'll notice that it creates a bit of a cut where that preorbital gland is. On the bottom, you're just pulling around and making the bottom of the jaw. You're following that stuff around the trachea and whatnot. And then from there, once those are the most important cuts you've made. You've made the nose cut underneath along the gum line. You've made a real good gum line cut. You've taken the eyelids and as much ear as possible. You've cut around the horns nice. And then it's just a matter of pulling and skinning that across the face till you meet your cuts where you've made before. One spot that some people miss is the top of the nose. When you're following that knife along the top of the nose coming down, you'll hit a point where it gets soft, and the point where it turns from hard to soft is where you want to drive that knife down towards that nasal cavity, and you want to cut straight down and then straight out and follow that bone the whole way. So take as much nose as possible by doing that, and then you can pull. That'll separate where you've made your cuts previously, and then you can pull it off the face.
Wow, there's a little bit there.
Yeah.
You make it seem pretty easy. Okay, so you've got the face off. Now, obviously fleshing it, so that's just removing the fat and the meat, not just, but obviously at some point we're going to salt it, but probably before that we're going to turn the ears and the lips. So do you want to jump into that a little bit and talk about that?
Yeah, you bet. And quite a few. The way I kind of breeze over a few things is a lot of people are pretty good at taking the hide off of the face, and that part doesn't scare them as much. So long as you know to cut more off than necessary, or cut as much off as necessary, that gives you a good start. What scares people is where you start splitting, and especially if you've never tried it. So I tell people to practice on a deer, whatever you shoot through a season, just even if you throw it in the freezer. And try it one day in the winter to try to learn something. Practice turning. And so all turning is all of that stuff that we've taken, all the eyelid, the nose, the lips, and the ears, they're all skin to skin and hair out, and there's no way for salt to get in there. So if you can imagine that lip that you've got and the nostrils that you've got, without you turning them, you've got all that cartilage and flesh, and you could pour 5 pounds of salt on it, and it will not penetrate all of that stuff before bacteria gets to those areas, and you have slippage or rot and causes you issues. So turning is getting into the areas that you can put salt to. So I'll start with the ears. The easiest way to think of an ear when you're turning it is you're going to take that ear and you're going to turn it completely inside out. It's going to be the same shape as the ear beginning when it starts, but it's going to be hair to hair on the inside. So the inside of that ear is going to be facing the outside of that ear flipped around. So if you were to stick your finger in it, you'd have both of them facing each other, and you're going to have all skin on the outside. And that comes from pulling down on that ear butt and running a line. As you see, you'll see the back of that ear. You can start cutting along the line where the hide pulls away from that ear cartilage. And it's a matter of slowly taking your time and pushing up. I used my titanium spoon while I was turning ears this trip. So using that spoon to turn and allow some pressure on my leg while I continually made little tiny cuts and turned them inside out. When you look at one, if you aren't sure whether you've gone far enough, look at an ear that's right side in or proper, and compare it for size. You don't have to go right to the edge where you can leave a couple millimeters, and salt will penetrate, but make sure that you turn them close enough that they literally look like sheep ears turned the other way. Each ear canal is going to have a bunch of meat and flesh on it around that cartilage, and all the ear canal is cartilage. So if you take as much of that meat off of the cartilage as possible, you'll know the difference when you're running a knife along it, whether you're taking meat off or whether you're cutting into cartilage. If you're cutting into cartilage, just leave it and just peel all that red meat off of the ear. That's just the muscle that controls that ear from turning and them listening and whatnot. So different animals have different size ear butts for the size of ear that they have and how they control them and whatnot. But take all that flesh off and leave that big long ear canal right down to where I talked about that pinky hole. Just leave that whole canal there. It'll dry up nicely and gives the taxidermist a lot to work with. So that's ears. Eyelids can be very daunting, and eyelids are one that you don't have to get right to the edge, but essentially if you were to pull your eyelid out, it's the part right where your lashes are that you're trying to get to on an animal. And you're trying to turn all that skin that you pulled off the eyeball, you're trying to turn that inside out where you can get salt almost to the inside of where your eyelashes are, or where that animal's eyelashes are. So it's a bit of a trickier feel, but you stick your finger on that eyelid from the outside, and you slowly start pulling that eyelid away and folding it back as you run a scalpel along that line. Not as important if you're a little hesitant about getting as close, but the closer you are, the better. There's some oils and whatnot in there that can affect it, but I would that'd be one area that I'd caution, that if you don't turn properly, you don't risk as much damage as some of the other areas, and you can do sometimes more damage if you're really kind of gung-ho with the knife. So that's one that takes a little bit of practice to really get, is turning eyelids. So just open them up as much as you can, and that'll allow salt to get to those oily glands in there. Lips are very similar to an eyelid, that you have all that flap from where it attached to the gum line, and it'd be a big ring that'll go right around the lips, and it's a pretty identifiable color change of what gum or what lip is and what inside flesh is. And so what you want to do is grab onto that lip flap, and again open it up. If you were to think of that, where a lip from the outside turns into the inside of a mouth, so that kind of that point of where a lip is, if you were to grab onto it on an animal, that point is where you want to turn inside out. So you want the inside of that mouth gum lip turned all the way around to the hair side, and it's almost going to lay flat when you're done. Leave as much of that lip line on as possible. It's very easy to cut off afterwards, what a taxidermist needs, but that's what a taxidermist tucks into a mount, to give that animal the look of actually having lip lines that are tucked into a mouth. Again, it's just a matter of folding that thing. Using your finger is really important there, where you're allowing your blade to run between or over top, and you're using that finger to judge how much flesh you have in between where the lip line is. It's a bit of a feel process where you can get close. And if you poke through in one spot, just back off a little bit and don't go quite as far. If you cut through and you see hair, you've probably missed the corner of the actual lip line, and you're too far into the hairline. But again, it's a process of just opening up that entire lip line, so that way salt can get right to the tips of the lip. A good idea or reference is essentially the line where somebody would put lipstick on, where they would start with lipstick, is where you want that knife blade to come on from the inside to turn. So where skin meets that actual lip line is where you want to get to, or hair meets that actual lip line. And then from there, it's nose. Splitting the nose is essentially, you're going to have one chunk that's going to have two nostrils in it. And what you want to do is turn those into two individual nostrils rather than one. So you'll see the septum from the back. You're looking at it, and it looks like two nostril holes looking through the back. you want to run a knife right through that septum straight down, and you'll notice that it starts peeling apart, and that keeps each one of those nostrils separate as two separate tubes, and opening them up where you're getting as close to that hairline as possible, turning with your fingers as well. It's a process that really involves feel. There's some really good videos out there about it on YouTube, and even taxidermy videos have some pretty good how-tos. For the amount of money that we invest in sheep hunting, if you're hesitant and you can't find a really, really good resource online, buy a $20, how to mount a deer taxidermy video, and they all have really, really good fleshing or turning tips as well. And you'll see exactly what the process looks like. Again, I have a few pictures of some things. I'm guilty of not taking as many as I should. But those are the key things you want to turn: is the ears, the lips, the eyes, and the nose.
Cool. So you've got all of it turned. You're good to go now. Salting. So I guess there's a couple scenarios. One thing, I guess, if you're going to be at your taxidermist in the next 3 hours, you really don't need to salt it. But sheep hunting, that's probably not going to happen. So I guess let's take your scenario. You and Darren are back there. You got your 2 710 milliliter bottles of salt. And let's say you're going to stay and kill a ram or kill a goat with Darren. So what do you do with your salt? How do you manage that? And what does that look like? And in median temperatures, like you were on a September hunt, I know if you're on an August hunt, that looks a little different because now you have more heat management issues, or if there's lots of rain. But talk about salting now.
Yeah, you bet. And I'll hit back on fleshing a little bit. You touched on it, but again, that's just getting all the fat, all the flesh off. That's tedious, and it takes some time. But just work through the entire cape from face down, around the bottom jaw, chin area holds a lot of flesh, so you can pull some flesh out of there, around behind the eyes, kind of the entire, anywhere that there was muscle structure will have some meat attached to that flesh. And so what you want to do is touch that cape. You want to get that flesh, that muscle structure off of the cape, and you'll start seeing it almost turning blue when you're getting close, where it's skin versus flesh. Fat is horrible for salt to get through, so make sure that you take all the salt off and all the meat off. And then 710 milliliter bottle. I like each person bringing one of their own, so that way you have the ability to manage one cape with the ability to keep hunting for another animal if you need to, or use that second one on the one cape at one point regardless. So if we wanted to keep hunting, I would use that. I did use that 710 milliliter bottle as soon as I was done, and I rubbed it into every single spot. Really good. Brian Martin has one good video online going through some salting and caping stuff where he shows, rubbing cape salt in over top of the cape. So, utilizing, if you're going to have anything spill off that cape, to not have it spill off into the grass, it's not going to do you any good. So working above the cape, working on the face, and a little bit of salt at a time. Don't pour the whole 710 milliliters out. But start working on the lips and grind all that salt into the lips, and then start working on the eyes and the ears, and slowly get every little spot salt ground into every little nook and cranny. Make sure there's no folds, flatten everything out really good, and then start by sprinkling it on the cape and slowly working it into the edges. Again, 710 milliliters or even a liter is not going to go far, so you have to use it really smart and make sure that it's spread right out. It was a nice, clear, sunny day, so we just left that cape kind of sitting out and getting some air, and within like 2 hours or an hour, it's got pools of blood and water on it where that salt is doing its job. In the case where we keep hunting, we'd have left that for the entire day and then rolled it up in the evening, put it in a cape bag in either Durlap sack or a game bag, and you can hang it up in a tree, let it drip, or you can put it wherever you're going to be able to manage it, keep it safe, cool, and salt will keep working like that. And then you can hunt for a couple more days on it, letting it air out a couple times if you need, the following day and the day after, depending on what the weather's doing. I've also tarped one up where I've laid it out flat and then put a tarp on top of it where I've let the salt do its work, and then covered it with a tarp after I've rolled it up, just so the rain isn't pouring in on that cape as well. If you're dealing with really bad rainy weather as well. Nice thing with having the second bottle is if you are successful, you have a decision to make whether you're probably going to have to hike both animals out differently or separately anyways. So probably what that second bottle is going to be used for is either to get that first or that second cape to a state like this one is, where you can then hike the other one out to go get meat out and whatnot and resalt it at the truck or the lake or wherever your base is. While the other one has some salt on it. And if you aren't successful, you can use that second bottle on the first animal, just giving yourself enough time. So that's what we did about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I took that second bottle. We knew we were going to hike out the next day, and we reapplied even more on there and let it work overnight, essentially rolled up as well.
Cool. Okay. Now, how long are you good? And what are some techniques? Let's say they're in for the opener. This year I was in for the opener. It was 30 degrees, 3 or 4 days. So let's say we kill a ram on day 1 and you want to hunt for another week. You've got your 2 7-10 mils. How long is that good for? How long could we hunt for before we start getting in trouble where we're risking spoilage, I guess? And I know it's not an exact science, but what could you get away with?
Yeah. You probably are better than what you were going to be with meat. So meat is going to turn into your measuring stick. Meat is probably what's going to cause you issues before the cape will. If you've fleshed properly and you've used that salt and really got it into everywhere, meat is going to be your bigger challenge than cape. Which is to say that doing that right, that even that small amount of salt can often keep a cape really good shape if you're keeping it cool and keeping it out of being balled up the entire time and getting it some air every once in a while. That salt will continue to work. Now it's not going to work as well as 2 or 3 pounds would, or 3 or 4 pounds would, but your bigger challenge is likely going to be meat. I'm quite confident that if you did things properly, you're going to run into meat issues before you run into cape issues. So you can hunt for another week with that amount. Again, looking at it and going, is this drying up by a week? That cape is going to be dry with enough salt on it. So if you get to day 3 or 4, you may have to make a decision, 4 or 5 even. You may have to make a decision and say, like, is this salt working anymore? Is this cape drying? What's the weather doing? Is it really hot? Is that air letting it dry as well? Or maybe use part of that next bottle. But if you flush properly, I'm pretty confident that 7-10 or 1 liter can allow you to hunt a lot longer than the meat likely will, anyways.
Okay, right on. So I guess just for anybody that's not been on a northern trip, obviously take lots of salt back at the truck. Have once you get your cape back to the truck, have lots of salt there and be ready to treat it again, I guess, for the long drive back. Especially you head down south and you start getting in those 30-degree temperatures in the lower mainland and stuff like that. We've all seen that before, right? So, so tips for the trip home. Should people be airing that cape out? I guess what's the best route, on your trip back, I guess?
I loaded that salt right up. I can't remember how much I put, but I had a small Home Depot bucket and I just had a big scoop in there. I loaded it up flat while we organized the truck and let it sit on there, and then rolled it up and put it in like a feed bag, and it rode home the entire way rolled up with that salt work. And again, I was really confident that it was ground into the right spots and really working. And for the most part, drives like that are really tough to keep that flat. You use the salt, roll it up, make sure when you roll it that you put it skin to skin and allow that salt to work. And you can drive from the Tat down to Cranbrook, and you'll have no problems at all. And then from there, you can unroll it when you get home and let it start drying up. You can that salt is going to work for 30 hours of driving or a couple of days of driving.
So you get home, is it essential to get that cape straight over to you, or can you sit on it for a week, or how get home? Do you throw it in the freezer until you can get to the taxidermist? What's the best approach from there?
if you've done it right, that salt, that you can let that salt dry that thing right up to till it's as hard as cardboard, essentially. If you have some hesitations about it, you can get it to a taxidermist quicker possible. If there's any, additional spots that weren't turned fully or weren't fleshed as well, they have the ability to do some stuff. And if you feel like you've made some bad mistakes, you can put it in the freezer. By then, you've probably had 3 or 4 days, of warmth and whatnot, and bacteria, depending on the type of weather. But if you feel like you've made some mistakes that you can't fix, you could put it in the freezer. You just got to remember that salt obviously is kind of doing the opposite in a freezer, but it will slow down any of that bacteria anyways in areas that salt maybe didn't get to. If you didn't turn something properly, it will at least kind of protect it a little bit. And I've had that for sure, where hunters have done that, and just it gives it that little extra bit of security. But if you're confident in what you've done, let that salt go to work and let it dry right up, and makes it really easy to get it to a taxidermist or give it to them. If your taxidermist is local, obviously, go see him as soon as possible, and it'll be a lot easier, a lot better off.
Very cool. What are we missing? What haven't we talked about yet that we should cover with regards to taxi stuff?
I can't think of anything. I know I paid attention to the last one and brought 710 milliliters of salt in a Gatorade bottle. I'm like, all right, I remember that. That went into the pack nicely. And a couple of blades, sharpener. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a good feeling at the end of a hunt if you're unsuccessful, dumping out 710 milliliters of salt into the grass and walking down with an empty bottle. But it's kind of a even better feeling when you dump it on a sheep cape and don't have to worry about dumping it out. You'll carry a lot more and dump it on the ground than you ever will put it on a cape, but it sure is a good feeling knowing that you don't have to carry it out. I would have loved to have a scale to measure how much weight we pulled off that cape with fleshing and salting alone, the liquid that came off it in that that short period of time. I know I weighed all the quarters and the head and cape and whatnot when I got home separately, but I'd be really curious to know how much. I had a pretty good pile of flesh sitting there, and that salt then just starts pulling moisture out and really saves a bunch of weight that you're carrying. Buying good fine salt is fine white salt. Don't buy thicker rock salt is another tip. Again, I go back to just like treating things like meat care. It's if you're treating your meat properly and treating your cape in the same way, you'll probably have success and you won't have some of the issues. Some guys, I think I addressed on the last one, some guys will say, "Oh, I've killed 3 or 4 rams and never used salt and been fine." And it happens. I know a lot of guys that have killed sheep, haven't used salt, got it home, hadn't had any issues, and it's just one of those things that I don't really like to have that extra variable. I've had capes that have been shot in late season with really good care, still have issues when you get them back from tannery because of slip and bacteria and whatnot. So control as many variables as possible. And as many guys might say, yeah, I don't like carrying the extra, weight of salt. I'll leave it back at the truck. It's not that much in the end, especially, when you're successful and you realize the difference it makes in the end product.
Yeah, for sure, man. Makes a lot of sense. So what I've done is I just purchased some of that fine iodine salt from a feed store. I bought a 25-pound bag or something like that. It's lasted me for years, and that's worked well. That's fine. Or you can just go to the grocery store and just buy iodine salt it gets a bit expensive, but you can do that also off the shelf.
Yeah, you can do it off the shelf as well, for sure. I obviously buy mine from a feed store as well, but the quantity that I use, doing taxidermy, I buy it that way. If all you're worried about is having a couple liters and then letting your taxidermist do the rest, okay, that works as well. But again, even regardless on a trip, you're probably going to have some extra back at the camp. whether that's base camp, whether that's the lake, or whether that's your truck. And so yeah, it's a $7 or $10 investment in a feed size bag of salt, and yeah, it goes a long ways. And obviously, we sprinkled some on backstraps as well. That's almost a rite of passage. Is you have to use Cape salt for when you're cooking backstraps over an open fire.
Yeah, right on. That's awesome. Okay, so somebody, are you taking any work right now? I know you're super busy, and you got your day job, you do your conservation work. Are you taking any capes, or what's your situation there? If somebody needs some work done?
Yeah, obviously I'm part time, but I love working on sheep, goats, caribou, mountain critters. BC is a huge province, which I end up doing a lot of work for some local friends, as well as a lot of Alberta clients. Given my location in Cranbrook, I'm pretty close to the Alberta border. Used to live in Alberta, but have customers all over the province, Prince George and Richmond and all over. So it's I'm always happy to take work. And right now, yeah, I think I've got a few sheep that I've taken in this year, which is shaping up pretty well. And yeah, get in touch with me if I'm always happy to chat taxidermy. There's some really good guys in BC that even if I don't take the job, I'm glad to pass along who I'd use in different areas of the province. There's some really, really good guys out there, and it's definitely a good community of guys in BC.
Yeah, right on. So if somebody wants to bring some work to you, how do they get in touch with you, Trev?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Rackmaster Taxidermy, or you can just look me up as Trevor Carruthers as well. Yeah, easy enough to find me kind of either spot or touch base. With you, obviously, you can get my cell phone number. Yeah, it's pretty easy enough to get a hold of on Facebook or Instagram at Rackmaster Taxidermy or Trevor Brothers. Every sheep that I do, I make sure that if the person is not a Wild Sheep Society BC member, I buy them a membership. So that's my one way I try to give back to the society through every sheep mount, and have usually do a couple other promotions with the society and whatnot to really promote membership overall when I'm taking it.
Yeah, right on. And we can't thank you enough for everything you do for the society. Not just that, but every year you're donating. We have the Barney's Ultimate Sheep Camp, which you donate that mount for every year, among all the other stuff you do on top of it. So can't thank you enough for everything, Trev. And appreciate you taking the time. Phase 2 here. It sounds like the audio quality is pretty decent. We'll have to see how it listens, but appreciate you taking the time. And as always, we've been through this twice now, and I learned some new tricks again today. So can never get too old. Just as a side, is there any way that you could do a webinar type thing where you could actually, do a caping seminar online, or is that pretty much impossible? Could you? Yeah, and I know probably not for sheep, but
yeah, sometimes for sheep it's an issue because of the ability to get a ram. I very rarely will get a ram delivered with the cape on the face. But I've got a mule deer draw in Alberta this year. If I remember properly, we should talk about doing something with that, or if I have something dropped off in the next month or two. That I have a lot of freezer room right now. Maybe we can tee something up with how we'd film it properly to kind of walk through some of the steps, so that way it's there. So yeah, let's chat some more about that. I've always thought the same thing. I try to take some pictures, but the more stuff that's out there, the better. So I'll make sure that I keep it in the back of my mind. It might not be a ram, but a lot of the basics will be there.
Yeah, right on. And for our listeners, if that's something you might be interested in, just shoot us an email at communications@wildsheepsociety.com and just let us know if that's something you'd tune into, or just like to get some feedback on that. If there's a lot of demand for it, then we can maybe bug you a bit more on it and see if we can put something together and do some sort of webinar based thing or something like that. Not sure what it looks like, but it'd be pretty cool, I think. So
Yeah, and I know society at convention and whatnot. It's happened a few times in the past. Where they've done one live, and as long as I did some thinking and planning on it, might be able to do something like that as well. When the world gets back to normal and we're meeting up like people again, if we could do something live, I'd look at that too. Where we could have a workshop or something with people there and a little bit more hands-on approach to seeing some of the stuff up close. So it's just one of those things that I have to think about and plan for, but we're worth chatting about if it's of interest to people.
Cool, man. Awesome. Well, that's all I have for you. I can't thank you enough for taking the time today. And just great ram this year. Super stoked for you, buddy. When I got that inReach off the freaking mountain, I just was losing it. I was so stoked for you. So really pumped, man, and appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Been a lot of fun, and hopefully part 2 worked out well.